The Manchego cheese has been aging for a little over 2 months now, and I'm anxious to try it. Still smells good and is looking stranger every day. I'll show it to you after I finish making this crisp bread. Originally I was going to use the crackers that I made a video of some time ago. They're very good, but I'm enjoying this new Scandinavian cooking book and really interested in some of the recipes in there. And as you can see from the title, what I'm going to make is called a Christmas crisp bread, which evidently is popular throughout Scandinavia. This particular recipe is from Sweden again. Not exactly a cracker, but very crisp and similar to a cracker in my opinion. So that's what I'm going to go with. I've got the ingredients lined up here. I'll read through them for you. I'm making a half batch. So if you're going to make the entire batch, you would double everything that I'm showing you, but the double batch is supposed to make 8 dozen breads, and I don't think I need that many. If I get 4 dozen out of this, that'll be quite enough. I'm using, as I say, half measure, so that's a half cup of butter, which if you're weighing is 112 grams, 112 and a half grams if you want to be that accurate. 3/4 of a cup of milk, 1/4 of a cup of lukewarm water, half teaspoon of sugar, half teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of baking soda, which is unusual. I've never used a recipe that uses both yeast and baking soda for leavening agents, but this one does. 1 cup of, I'm using multigrain, the recipe says whole wheat flour. I'm using a multigrain flour, which does have whole wheat in it, a multigrain bread flour actually, and 2 cups of either bread flour or all-purpose flour, and what I'm using is a bread flour. Now, the first thing that I have to do is take the milk and the butter and put them in a saucepan, heat them until the milk has melted, and then let it cool down. So I'll bring you back at that point. It's probably the butter that will melt, right? What I wanted to say is I forgot to mention yeast. It calls for a packet, or with this half batch would be 1 packet of regular yeast. I don't use regular yeast, I'm using an instant yeast. So I'm using 1 tablespoon of instant yeast. Now the 1/4 cup of lukewarm water and the half teaspoon of sugar were to prove the yeast in, and you don't need to prove yeast if you're using the instant. I'm still going to add the water and the little bit of sugar. The water will be, make sure I have enough moisture in there, and the half teaspoon of sugar won't hurt anything. It'll give the yeast something to feed on. Also, the recipe book says to start with the whole wheat flour and then to add the bread flour as needed. Well, I didn't read that part. I already measured it out, but I don't see that as being a problem. If I think it's too wet, I'll add a bit more flour. If I think it's too dry, I'll add a bit more water, just to get the consistency that I would think you would need. So the butter is almost melted, so as soon as that cools, I'll come back. Well, the milk and butter have cooled down to just being tepid. I'll add the other dry ingredients here. And just sort of mix them together a bit with a whisk. Get the yeast evenly distributed. I added the 1/4 cup of tepid water to the butter and milk mixture. Now, here's hoping this just combines. I don't have to add anything else. I'll get my hands in there just a bit, I guess. I think this is going to be all right. Just as soon as it's combined, it rests for 15 minutes before you knead it. So I think that's probably all right there, but we'll know better after it has rested for 15 minutes and gets a chance to fully hydrate the flour. So I'll bring you back at that point. Now it gets turned out onto a lightly floured board and kneaded for 5 minutes, it says. It's very soft dough. And I don't think you'd want to knead it for much more than 5 minutes. Just because of what happens to it next. You have to roll it out very thin. It is still a little wet. I'll add a little more flour. And so you don't want to develop a great deal of gluten. You'll never get it rolled out. So I will continue gently kneading it here for a few minutes. And I'll bring you back. Okay, I kneaded it for, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, something like that. Not a lot, because I don't want to develop a strong gluten and make it impossible to roll it out. I got a feeling it's going to be difficult to roll it out thinly anyway. The instructions for the entire batch says to then divide it into 4 equal pieces. And they're rolling it out on the sheet pan, an oiled or greased sheet pan. Well, mine aren't as large as they're talking about, so I've divided it into 3. Divide it any way you want depending on what you've got, because it says to roll it out very thin. That's what makes it nice and crisp when it bakes. And I'm going to try to roll it out on parchment paper and then just transfer that to my sheet pan rather than greasing the sheet pan and trying to roll, because my sheet pans have sides on them, and I don't know if theirs does or not. There's no photographs in this cookbook, as I say, but anyway, we'll see what happens here if I can get this to roll out on a parchment paper. It's crinkling up my parchment paper. I think I better get these out of the way. Put them back over here on the scales, I guess. Sometimes, like if you're doing a pizza dough or whatever and it won't roll out for you, you roll it as far as you can and then you let it rest. And it will work better that way. So I may have to let this rest halfway through. We'll see. It's getting started anyway. We want it very thin. That's about the thickness that I did my crackers at. This gets done even thinner than the crackers. Not too bad. I'll fool around with it a little more and then I'll bring you back to show you what it looks like before I put it in the oven. Okay, I was able to get it fairly thin, and I just continued rolling even though it went off the parchment paper. And all I'm going to do is cut the bits off that are not on the parchment paper, and I'll add those to one of the other pieces that are yet to be rolled out. Also some of the little bits at the edges that are thicker, I'll cut those off too. Now the recipe book says to cut it into pieces that are 2 inches by 4 inches. I'm not terribly concerned about that. I looked online just to get photographs of what things look like, because I said the book doesn't have any photographs. And they're done in all shapes and sizes, some of them just freestyle, which look very interesting. I will just sort of divide this up. You cut it before you bake it. But I'm not really measuring. I don't really care what the dimensions are. I just want to make it so that you can easily divide it up when it comes out of the oven, I guess. The irregular pieces at the edge will be my freestyle ones. Now, they roll it out, I don't completely roll it out with a thing they call a hobnail rolling pin, or that's just done to make the dents in it in the finished product before it goes in the oven. But it said if you don't have a hobnailed rolling pin, which I don't have, I've got a lot of kitchen gadgets, but I don't have any hobnail rolling pins. It's an interesting thing. I took a look online to see what one looked like, and I don't expect that I will do this enough that I could justify buying. Not that they're expensive, but one more thing that you've got to try to find some place to keep it until you use it the next time. I don't think I would get much use out of a hobnail rolling pin. Anyway, I'm poking as many holes as possible, and I'll bring you back before I put this in the oven to show you what it looks like. Well, there it is after having been docked. And the next time I do that, I will dock it before I do the slicing it into individual pieces. I had to sort of hold down each individual piece as I did my docking. I guess you can see the little holes that I've made there. The oven is preheating to 350 degrees. When it gets to 350 degrees, you cook it basically, I think, until it's brown. Bake for 25 minutes or until golden and crisp. So 350 degrees at 25 minutes with those little thin things. They certainly should be golden and crisp. I'll bring you back and show you what they look like when they come out of the oven. I'll prepare the next sheet and have it ready to go in when this one comes out. Ready to start rolling out the second one. I still haven't put the first one in the oven. I won't make you watch me do that again. It's the same process, but I got thinking about what I said earlier about the ones that I found online. Looks like some of them were done freeform. To me, what it looked like they did is they baked it in one sheet and then just broke it up into pieces when it was, cool and dry or whatever. I don't think I'll try that, but that's what it looked like they did. Well, the second one rolled out much easier than the first one did, and I suspect that that is because the dough had rested longer, so it was more pliable. Hopefully the third one will be even faster. It looks like I'll be able to put 2 trays in the oven the first time around here. The oven still hasn't quite gone to 350 degrees yet. And there it goes. That was the beep, 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 beep. So I'll get this ready and put both trays in. In case you didn't watch the other video when I've been cooking out of this Scandinavian cookbook, this is it, and that's the author there, Beatrice, whose last name, as I said before, I won't attempt to butcher that. I know I would if I tried. And it's the Great Scandinavian Baking Book. A lot of really nice recipes in it. I'm showing you the book because I had a couple of people after the last video tell me that they ordered the book. So maybe you want to have a look at finding the book online or in a bookstore if it interests you. Well, they've all been baked, and as you can see, varying colors. I experimented some with the length of time they were in the 350 degree oven. The darker ones, like this one here, were in a full 25 minutes, and they are very crisp. These lighter colored ones I only did for 20 minutes, and they're still quite crisp, just as crisp really, I would say. So I think if I were to do it again, I prefer the lighter color. I would do them for 20 minutes. They have to be stored in something that's airtight, a biscuit tin, or I'm using one of these cheap boughten, what is that, made by Ziploc, I guess, storage containers with a tight cover. The last little bit that was left over, I just ironed it out with the rolling pin and did it freeform. It sort of ended up shaped sort of like Australia, but this is what I meant by what they looked like from the photographs that I saw. They're just done in a larger sheet and then just broken into pieces. Well, that is my Swedish crisp bread, Christmas crisp bread. Now that's Swedish. Now to get out the Spanish cheese and see what they're like together, I guess. I'll get these stored and then I'll bring out the cheese. Well, there is the Manchego, just out of the cheese cave. And it's a little over 2 months, perhaps a week or 10 days, over 2 months. Different times I've looked at it, I've been a bit concerned because the mold looked blue and the books all talk about it being black or dark gray or whatever is the color it should turn. Well, I discovered you're also supposed to oil it occasionally with olive oil, rub on olive oil. Well, as soon as you rub it with olive oil, it does turn the black color, so I guess that's what it was supposed to do. It says that the mold is edible, no problem, but I don't think I'm going to eat the mold. See what I can get out of the cheese here, though. It still smells delicious. I'll just take a small wedge out for now. Very solid. That's quite nice. Give that a try. I had to get out my fancy cheese cutting knives here. I bought those last year along with a cheese board and took them to a Christmas party that I was taking cheese to, and that was the only time I've ever used them so far. So I got them out to give it a try here, I guess. I want to try this first without the flat bread, the crisp bread. You know, I'm always at a loss as to what to compare the flavors of the cheeses to. I've never had Manchego before. It's not as sharp as I thought it would be. It has a lovely flavor. And I really don't know what cheese to compare it to, I guess. Sounds strange for a person who makes cheese. It's quite soft. It would be not at all crumbly, I don't think. Try it on one of the darker crackers here. I really like it. I'm sure it's a cheese that I will make again in the future. Once I get this consumed, it's over 4 pounds of cheese. And I don't want to put it just back in the container that it was in the cheese fridge to continue aging it. All surfaces that I cut would then form mold on them. I think what I'm going to do is pat it dry with paper towel or whatever. Get any oil that might be still on the surface. I'll cut it up into several larger pieces and I'll vacuum pack them and put those in the cheese fridge. It can continue to age a bit that way, but if I get it dry enough and don't put any water in with it, any air in with it, it shouldn't continue to develop the mold. It will hopefully store well, and I'll just be able to bring it out and you put it in the regular refrigerator as I want a piece of it. It is very good. A little sharp, but not anywhere near as sharp as an older aged cheddar or Gouda. Much milder than that. But definitely a very good flavor. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you're a cheese maker, I hope you'll try making Manchego. And if the flatbreads, the Crispbreads, interest you, I think they're something that'll store quite a while in an airtight container. They're like a cracker. You know how long you keep a cracker. They just don't get stale because they're so dry and crisp. But they'll be nice to have with cheese and probably with soups and things too. Well, thank you very much for watching. Oh, I thought I might as well tag this bit on to the end. I just cut it into, I think there's 7 pieces there, not counting the smaller piece that I've got on a plate that I'm going to keep out. But I'm going to vacuum pack those in bags. I'll show you what it looks like when I finish. Ready to do the last one, so I thought I'd show you the process in case you're somebody that hasn't seen one of these things work before. I just put that roll of bags in there. Finally got it down to the size where it'll fit, but it's still a little tight, I guess. That cuts off the bag, and now you have to seal the bottom edge of it. It's a nifty little machine. It's the second one that I've had. I had some sort of a knockoff company one first, and thankfully, I like Amazon. They don't hesitate about giving you your money back. I had it for several months, but it was a piece of garbage. It just would not seal, and they gave me back my full purchase price. And I bought this one from them. This is made by the Food Saver company. They make much more expensive ones. I think this might be their least expensive model. Don't recall what I paid for it because I've had this now for a couple of years. But not a lot of money. It saves you a lot of money when you're vacuum sealing stuff so that the air doesn't get at them and destroy them. Now the cheese is in the bag. You probably couldn't really see that. I'll move this back just a bit. Well, it moves when I do this. Whether it's dry or moist goods, I'm selecting moist. It's not very moist, but it isn't exactly dry either. So pumps the air out of the bag. And now it's sealing it. You can probably hear my roosters talking in the background. I just let out the little family with the 3 baby chicks a little while ago. And now it is sealed. Ready to go. I'll show you all 7 of them, and that will finally get this video finished. Well, that's all of them, and as I said, I'm going to put them back in the cheese ripening fridge, the cheese cave, whatever you want to call it. They will continue to mature, just not as rapidly as they were maturing in the air inside of the container that they were in, because they weren't sealed. Well, they were sealed in the container, but it was high humidity, and they would be maturing much more rapidly in there. But if I should happen to open one and I think it's getting too ripe or whatever, then the rest of them I will just put them in the regular refrigerator. With most of this kind of cheese, hard cheese or semi-hard cheese, once you vacuum pack it like that and put it in the temperature of a regular refrigerator, it will keep for months. It doesn't do a lot of maturing, but I suppose it's still maturing a bit more in there where it's much colder, but literally it will keep for months, maybe a year or more. Well, I think I said thank you for watching once before, but I'll say it again. Thank you very much for watching.